Right. Should we talk some nonsense?
It's what we're here for.
Cool. All right. There's a lot of nonsense we could go through, and it seems proper that we pick the biggest nonsense that seems to be on everybody's mind right now. Probably because it has been one of the biggest nonsenses that we've seen in recent history, at very least, and that would be on the topic of the reactions to the more recent president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest statement.
And that's not to say that Donald Trump is the nonsense. It's just
it's the way people treat him that's the nonsense.
It's what the whole situation is representative of, and he's the thing with Donald Trump is he's not a politician, and the politicians don't like that, and that's basically had knock-on effects in the whole scheme of things.
He doesn't play the politician's game. He plays his own game, and they don't know the rules to his game. They know the rules to the politician's game and what to expect from politicians and how they behave, and question dodging and things like that, which is certainly famous with British politicians. I don't know about American politicians so much because I've never paid attention to them in my entire life until now. But he plays his own games. He doesn't do things like question dodging. He does, oh, you've asked a question, so I'll give you the answer that I think.
Yeah.
Even if it offends you, I don't give a shit.
This is the thing. It's not that he's a good or a bad thing. He's a brand new thing. I think it's something new to politics. It's something that's probably been missing for a while. And that's, for a start, somebody's not a politician, but somebody who's going to ask questions of things and not be afraid of offending people in a world which seems to be becoming more and more progressively controlled by political correctness. Yeah,
it's like over the years, the sun's made the world brittle. And that's what at the moment. I think if we're going to run with that metaphor, someone needs to recondition the way people are. And oh god, that's got bad terminology, but the same way you'd recondition leather so that it doesn't flake and chip away. And at the moment, that's what everyone's attitude is.
I mean, things obviously needed to shake up in a large way. The world was changing so quickly that it couldn't just, I think, sustain itself with the old style of system of politicians just saying whatever they think everybody wants to hear.
And then not saying anything at all if they don't have what people want to hear.
Yeah, it's the thing. It's like you can listen to a lot of politicians, and then if you're not listening to them too much, you wouldn't tell they're saying anything that's a problem of any sort. But a lot of the time, they're saying very little of anything, and just trying to buy people off with language. And if Trump was trying to do that, then he wouldn't be ruffling so many feathers. I mean, generally people don't want to pay for their feathers to be ruffled, but maybe they do. But I mean, something that seems interesting to me about Donald Trump is that he seems to be somebody who could end up in 4 years' time being seen as something very, very different if given enough time to develop. I mean, if things, positive changes keep being made across the board by knock-on effect of his interactions with things, then it might turn out that it'd be hard. It seems hard to predict exactly what his final form could be, but his final form does not seem. It seems worth thinking about.
Yeah, I think we saw a very flamboyant base form during his campaigning.
Yeah, because he seems.
I need to be loud, and I need to make sure I grab people's attentions and shake the world a little bit here. So people go, "Oh, what's this?" And half the people go, "This is amazing. I'm enjoying this wild ride." And some people are going, "This is scary. I'm not ready for this." And then as he went into his, out of his campaign and into running his administration, it became a more refined, elegant form. And that doesn't sound like Trump, but when you compare it to what he was like during the campaign to what he went into, he did settle down, and it was a different side, but it was effective. And it seems, if it's not him himself, if it's his entire team, they seem to be running things well. No, don't touch. Watch your fingers play. But then what have we got to see? You know, he's going to be campaigning again in the coming year, and that's going to begin. So we're going to see it all over again. You know, it's going to ramp up again, and then he's going to slip back in to running administration again if he's successful in his campaign. And then what happens? You know, so I think it's improving.
Eris wants to be part of the
she does
conversation.
I've got a very vocal dog, and if she wants something, she's quite noisy to tell you about it. But yeah, people are complaining about what he's like now.
Yeah,
but
this
is all really basic bitch shit.
Yeah.
It's not like been something really big and drastic. You know, they've been treating him like he's going around with stormtroopers, and that's not been the case. But what do they think is going to happen?
Yeah, it's their interpretation of what Trump will be in the future, and even beyond. I mean, how he'll be regarded going forward. You know, after, because he can only be president for so long. So after which point, I mean, you know, history is going to start looking back at him and considering, you know, what kind of a president was he really? And I mean, you know, maybe after that, yeah, they might end up looking back at him and go, actually, he was one of the best presidents there ever was. He did all these things and tackled the establishment, whilst people painted him as the establishment. And this seems a bizarre thing. It's like a lot of people I know who've always been. Yeah. And a little bit anti-establishment, a little bit, you know, stick it to the man and power to the people and all that sort of stuff. They seem to dislike Trump, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because he seems to be power to the people and he seems to be stick it to the man, and like, you know, it's odd that they can't quite see that. It's like, I
think they think the government's the man, but in America now, the government's not the one being the man. It's the manufacturers in Silicon Valley, like Apple, etc. It's the big media outlets. They're the man right now, because they're telling people what you can and cannot think, what you can and cannot buy. You know, what the right thoughts to have are. How are they not the man if they're the ones telling you what to do, and he's trying to rein them in and say, what you're doing is wrong, you shouldn't be controlling the people like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. The guy seems to be about America, and America seems to want to be at least about freedoms and stuff. So by extension, Donald Trump is about freedom, which seems... I mean, maybe in a way, a problem is that the rest of the world can see Donald Trump affect the judgments of others, and where they don't see the difference between the British way of describing conservative and the American way of describing conservative, they don't see that these two are kind of different things, and they're seeing him as something he's not entirely, because I mean they see him about trying to keep things the same or whatever, or it'll be unwilling to change, or not be willing to be liberal with things, as it were. And I think, you know, Donald Trump seems more of a liberal person than most of the liberals, even maybe on both dimensions of analysis, in terms of like the American kind of liberal and the British kind of liberal.
I mean, people have just gotten used to the status quo of government trying to tell us to stop what to do, and that's bad. Now it's the other way around, and now they're trying to tell people what to do, and he's trying to say no, people should be able to do what they need to do.
They gave up asking questions to the real people they should ask questions to. I mean the people, you know, the ones that would have been traditionally, you know, the punks and things like that, alternatives, like the ones that are willing to consider different ways of doing things. They
don't realise that this is the alternative way that's now coming into power.
Yeah, they don't realise that Donald Trump is the alternative. Exactly. Thank you. They saved me there.
They've just gotten used to...
My thoughts were unravelling right in front of my brain.
Politician bad.
But, yeah. They got so used to politician bad, they've just now gone like, oh, Donald Trump, you must be...
No one's giving him a chance. I don't think he's perfect. I think he's fucked up on some things. There's policies of his that I don't have a say. I'm a British man. What do I have to fucking say about American politics? Well,
honestly,
maybe we do, in a sense of, because what happens in America bleeds out to the rest of the world.
It's always good to have an outsider perspective on things as well as an insider. You've got to look at things on all levels. You've got to look at things all the way.
But yeah, I'm not like a fucking super fan. And the thing is, the people who do support him will call out when he's done something wrong. I don't actually see anyone who 100% follows him blindly. There's no one going, he can do no wrong. He's fucked up on some shit. There's places where he needs to crack down more, and he hasn't. And by that I mean, people acting outrageously and not qualming big fights and dangerous situations where not an iron fist could have been employed, but a democratic touch of here, let's talk about this, let's have a dialogue, and that's not being pushed in a time of when everyone's trying to silence each other.
I'd like to think one day we could live in a world where politicians or presidents like Donald Trump could be looked at as the worst. But I don't think we can. I don't think we're anywhere near that. I think, like, you look at him compared to the others. I mean, he represents something that's much better than what they represent in a lot of ways. I guess we'll just take a brief interval.
Continue.
Sorry, I was just saying where in the future maybe we could be at a point where Donald Trump would be seen as a very poor candidate in any political race, but at the moment it's like you compare him to the other ones, and he at least seems honest.
He won because he was the best.
Human. And he at least seems to be trying to talk about things that are in some way important, instead of trying to make it things like petty identity battles and such like that.
There's probably 100,000 Americans in America right now who could have stood in place, because it's a two-party system, could have stood in place of Donald Trump and done a better job right now. But he's not the worst thing in the world, and he's certainly better than everyone else that seemed to be standing at the time.
I think there's plenty of people out there who would be great political candidates if they were given the opportunity, and maybe retrospectively they were given the opportunity in the past or whatever, or we could say that if more investment was put into people with potential at an earlier age, they might be able to go further with things, and we might have the right people in the right places. But I don't think that really has happened. It's been very exclusionary, and so on this occasion at least, it is somebody different than the usual political establishment. But I mean, it might be arguable that this is just somebody who's bought in because they had a whole bunch of money and they basically self-funded their campaign. So I mean, at least it's a change.
Yeah. Now from here, so if the final form is something, it's either he can just go, do you know what, fuck it, you're calling for authoritarianism in your government, you're calling me, the bad guy, well, say hello to the bad guy, and he could fucking crack down. Well,
this is the thing.
This
is what I wonder, because it could be like, look,
this is what you asked for.
he might declare the culture war or something like that, and then
I'm pushing back.
Yeah, exactly. And it might end up where there's things that need to be imposed as a result of other people's pushback against him. But I mean, maybe that's a part of his whole plan all along.
I think we'll let this sort of segue into sort of the next point of
we can't talk about it.
He talks shit, and that's fine, but when he talks shit, people kick up a fuss, and if they can't, if he's the highest power in the land in the sense, then who's they turn to? So I've been thinking for a while now, and I sort of, when I start to see it become actuality, it's like, okay, this is concerning, and that's with the idea of the death of God, and people are looking for something to replace religion because the majority of the countries are now majority atheist now, or at very minimum agnostic or spiritual in some way. At least
in the West.
Yeah. Yeah. In the areas of culture that we see, because we don't look at Indian culture and Indian politics and things, or Chinese, or we see Korea because Korea is quite loud, but then we only ever see the complaints of the man at the top, which is pretty much the same as what America's happening anyway. But people are then turning to false idols, which was of course one of the 7 commandments: thou shalt not worship false idols, and for the good purpose of we're seeing what happens now. At the moment, it's not a golden statue of a goat or something else ludicrous. It's the brands that we have around us all the time have become the idols, because we're fed that these are the shining perfection that we need to aspire to be a part of, have in our lives. I mean, the thing that really spurned this, I'll read out the tweet verbatim, which is... I can't remember the source. I can very quickly bring it up. It's Nathaniel Mayerson. Don't go and harass him, because that's not going to achieve anything. I'm sure enough people have done that already.
Don't go harass him.
Yeah.
Well, disclaimer, this will maybe... Can this be the last time we ever give a disclaimer to not go harass? Because can we just presume from this point that everybody's got their own damn volition?
Everyone's got agency,
to harass people. I mean,
if you want to go harass,
at the end of the day,
don't hold us accountable for it. I'm not going to be able to stop people going and doing harassment.
Well, we just
have control over
we disavow these things.
Yeah.
In advance.
Anyway,
we disavow people using us as false idols, for example. Don't worship our words or whatever. I doubt anybody would or should. Most people are savvy enough to not listen to anybody, let alone me.
Yeah.
So
Nathaniel's wise comment, allow me. Reached out this morning to us. I'll start again. I'll give the context. It's based off the statements that Donald Trump had made regarding 4 members of political staff and comments they had made to him in his retort to them. But his reply was, so Nathaniel said, reached out this morning to Amazon, Apple, Walmart, Target, Nike, Under Armour, Patagonia, and Levi for thoughts on Trump's racist comment about 4 minority congresswomen. Target declined to comment. No response from the others so far. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why? What did they hope to achieve?
There's so much that could be said about this.
The people who made my shoes said that Orange Man was indeed bad. What does it matter what they say? They sell you things.
By all accounts, all 4 of these people are questionable on multiple dimensions as politicians.
But that's not the point here. The point here is why go to these brands to be told how to think? Why have they created such a way in their mind that I can't have my thoughts on this, or my thoughts and my comments aren't important, as this person seems to be sort of a political correspondent in some sense, for if it's a small time media thing or if he's part of something bigger, I'm not sure. I don't care enough about the individual. I've only glanced at them briefly. But why is it important that we hear what the people who make computers say about racist comments?
And it wasn't even a racist comment in their books. It was a racist comment. But
that's not the point. The point being is, why are we looking to them? These aren't the people we should be getting our morals from.
No.
We shouldn't be getting our decisions of how we live our lives from people who make clothes. That's not what they're there for. They're there to sell you something that you can enjoy, regardless of how you feel about politics, your cultural climate, whatever else may be going on in your world.
There's people looking for a painting by numbers way of living.
They just don't know where to look to.
No, that's right.
They don't have a reverend or a pastor to go to
or
ask
even
these
the
things.
ability to make sense for themselves, or the drive or the want to. They can't just go, oh, hang on, maybe this is not correct, or maybe there's different ways of looking at things.
I would understand if it was, here's a handful of individuals, maybe even celebrities. I could maybe make sense. It doesn't mean it's right, because you shouldn't be asking celebrities what your morals should be anyway, or what they think about this. But these are big faceless entities that don't actually have any real power. Well, they shouldn't have real power, because the power of companies like Amazon should be the power of the people who use their services. So what did he hope to achieve? I mean, to show that none of them came back, it was like he made a prayer to a deity and expected the deity to answer his prayer. And of course, deities don't do that. Even if they existed, no one's going to get all their prayers answered. But the whole thing just rubbed me the wrong way. It's like such nonsense that you'd expect to get that kind of guidance from those sources. I'd love to know what he was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, again, it shows that people have been lost for a long time in terms of like having anything to anchor their truths to, or any people have been, I don't know, misguided, I suppose is the best way to put it. And then like you keep alluding to, I mean, you say about Nietzsche's death of God being the cause of that. I mean, I don't think it's even the death of God so much. I think it's the death of meaning. I think Nietzsche was close, but it's like it was, it's the meaning that they can derive from the idea of God. It's just like, you can derive meaning from other sources instead. But,
there's nothing wrong with like enjoying brands and having a favorite brand, and even as going as far as wanting to represent them. If you want to slap a Coca-Cola symbol on your car because you really, really enjoy Coca-Cola and you want to show the world that's fine. But don't ask Coca-Cola, what should I do about, my son's got bad, fucking results in his test. What shall I do?
Yeah.
Expecting an answer. Expecting some divine wisdom from,
If Donald Trump's not the alternative, then why is he at war with the mainstream? That's the ultimate proof, really, isn't it?
And the mainstream has become this conglomerate of it's
become more and more homogenized. There's
as an intermediate thing that's between government and people. They've got power because they're big and they have a lot of wealth.
Well,
and
I think
that's how they see it.
They're in cahoots with the government and the media. They're all, in each other's pockets, basically. And Donald Trump, I don't think is really in anybody's pockets, maybe apart from Fox News to an extent. And even then, I'm not even sure about that. I get the impression that all the news outlets are basically, they're all somehow linked to the same sources and the same motivation. They've all got the same driving forces behind them, but in many senses the same people and organisations behind them. So it's almost like it's like a negative feedback loop of power in a way. That's probably the loosest way, but the shortest way I compare. But yeah, it's all obscured from view, obviously. Like people we can't see the interactions that go throughout the mainstream, whatever you want to call them, establishments, I suppose is best, but that never sounds right.
Just entities.
Yeah,
well, you break it down to something so simple, and it's people got the idea that
they're all in a sense they're like kind of self-appointed authorities in a way, aren't they? I suppose that's one way of describing them.
And yet this is what makes it so weird, is of course that a lot of these people with these kind of like opinions asking these questions are people who are pro-communism, pro-socialism, but they only have power because of capitalism. So why are they supporting a capitalist power?
It is the bizarre thing. I mean, they're saying that they probably would have been like, well, if we could have a communist system the whole time, and that would have given the same things as what capitalism would have given, but better and with more freedom and whatever. And it's just like, well, I mean, the other examples of every time this happened before demonstrate that isn't the case. And then they'll be like, they haven't done it properly. They wouldn't have. I myself wouldn't have got it wrong if I'd done it myself, and that's, Peterson points out often that that's a clear criticism of him, because it's pretty arrogant to think that you can do something that other people have tried to do and made catastrophic repercussions throughout history. It screams of arrogance, and I think it's it seems a lot of these organisations end up just being collections of narcissists in a way, because it's like, they're all power hungry, they're all willing to exploit others to, well, maybe not all, not all people who are in these, they might be thinking they're doing the right thing, but ultimately I think it is motivated by, is the thirst for power, in a sense. There's a YouTuber called Hadbel Celine used to talk about power and such a lot. And he kind of disappeared off face planet, which is a shame, but he seems to be I think he's putting out a few videos every now and again. Brief interlude whilst dogs are being disciplined. Dog has been disciplined.
So let's present the idea of imperfectionism.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure has probably been coined as a terminology for other things.
I can't exactly remember where I bumped into the term the other day. I think it was on what's it called, the meme website, the one that describes know your meme. That's the one. Yeah, the meme encyclopedia basically.
For normies.
It was used to describe Dolan Duck. When I had to somebody refer to Dolan Duck and being at least in modern terms slightly normie, but in real terms far from the term. I wasn't aware what Dolan Duck was, so investigated this website and ran into this term. And you discovered
basically all the badly drawn forms of well-known characters, each with their own corruption of their name. It's either sort of an anagram or just some nonsense letters moved into it. But yeah, it's something I've been exposed to for a long time, just from web browsing usage.
When I heard it, I was like, I think Adam's mentioned that one time before,
but it's an interesting form of art.
Not only is it an interesting form of art, but it's
and what the culture sort of
seems to be
around
the artistic movement that seems to be representative of a certain culture based around internet, the internet and the happening of it, and whatever that can be described. Is there a word for the occurrence of the internet? I don't think there is. But the interneting. So yeah, as a result of the interneting, there seems to be.
It originally stems off it gets called Chan culture, because that's where it stems from. That's where it originates from. Majority of the memes stem from Chan culture.
But with imperfectionism, it seems to have roots before Chan culture, doesn't it? Because the Dave First, Jerry Jackson cartoons, which and you could,
around the same time, in honesty, mid 2000s.
Does Chris Chan predate 4chan? I don't think Chris Chan does. So with Chris Chan, you could argue that
but
that
Chris
is a form
Chan
of
wasn't known until about a decade. Probably about 6 years into 4chan existing. That's when Chris Chan was discovered. But he was doing his own thing in his own tiny bubble that was undiscovered and unknown. It was like turning over a rock and finding its own little ecosystem, growing on it.
Yeah,
is the best way I can describe it. But that rock didn't get turned over for many years. But they're separate entities. But yeah, I like the idea of the self-aware doing something bad, as in low quality, on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to something just not someone trying to do something good and it's just terrible, and they've either got no self-awareness of this isn't very good, but I think it is because my mum says I'm cool.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't appreciate that
Mario
as much.
Paint as a kid. So, like, I'd make a lot of like deliberately imperfectionist style of creations and things, especially with the small animations that you could make. You could make like little 9-frame animations.
Yeah,
and
it's like which Beatle is it that does MS Paint art? Is it Ringo? Or is it George?
Oh, I don't even know. Is that a thing?
Okay. Yeah. Fuck.
I mean, at least one.
Carry on. Let me show you what the idea is. But I don't think this is like ever been done bad on purpose. I think it's just their style, but it's really shit. It's actually just showing me pictures of Beatles drawn. It's like, which member of the Beatles is it that does it?
Beatles have been deleted from the
They're being censored off Google Images apparently.
The digital genocide of the white male.
Oh, there we go. It's Ringo Starr's art. So this is, if you just go onto YouTube and search Ringo Starr MS Paint art, he just does like some really weird impressionism, and it must be purposeful because
brilliantly lazy and pointless.
Yeah, it's like the quality you'd expect from like a 6-year-old.
It's like Ringo Starr. I can make whatever art I want.
Reminiscent of Picasso, though, in a sense.
The Beatles.
So that's probably one of the earliest forms.
That's what I'd imagine he sounds like.
I don't know when Ringo Starr started doing them, but that's probably one of the earliest forms of imperfectionism that was digital. But we can definitely say that.
I think sort of like impressionism and to an extent
Picasso.
surrealism has various kinds of modern art definitely have a imperfectionist quality to them. And I mean, I was an art student a few times, but I was an incredibly lazy and disinterested art student, so I didn't really learn anything at all. I just did some pictures sometimes and skived up a lot. But I got an A in the GCSE and then just stopped learning at that point, I think. But
I don't think you necessarily learn art anyway. I mean, you can learn to draw, you can learn to sculpt, well, you can learn techniques, but I think art is something that comes from within anyway. Yeah, a lot of the time this is somehow some kind of unusual reflection of something. But imperfectionism memes are normally my favourite. The things like, though the bad English in it is a form of imperfectionism, and that always tickles me. My favourite like meme characters span from Spurdo Spada, the badly drawn version of Pedo Bear that talks in bad English.
Familiar with this one.
It's repeating everything like with epic with Eben and fuck with Thug, and I will say Eben and Thug like naturally instead of going to those words if I can help it. Well, no, if I can help it, it just occurs. And then it goes down a further layer of there's the bad drawn version of Spurdo Spada, Gondola, so it's like imperfectionism of imperfectionism. It's like
if there's already
layering it
got
like
an imperfectionism website of some description that are actually building off the term and saying this is a website for works that can be classified as imperfectionist or whatever. Could be some space to grow. It seems like a very interesting cultural phenomenon that doesn't or hasn't been given the credit that it's due. It seems it's probably not been
but I think it kind of gets just sucked into modern art.
Well, maybe, yeah.
People just seem to go, modern art.
Yeah, like I say, maybe I'm just being artistically ignorant, and it's just something that, I could speak to somebody who actually knows about art, and they'd be like, yes, imperfectionism, that's something that was or if you don't understand that, you don't understand art, mate. That's my
but it works its way into a lot of pop culture anyway. I mean, simple things like the way that eyes were drawn in Rick and Morty, that they're these little weird squiggly shapes that don't look right.
A lot of cartoons, I suppose, are in a way. Almost all cartoons are somehow imperfectionist, I suppose. because they're rarely
down to the way they're
anatomically
stylized,
correct.
yeah.
I mean, I suppose some Disney does, but you look at nearly every cartoon on the Cartoon Network, that's still going. It probably is. I'm pretty sure it's still going. I haven't watched TV for a long time, but it's maybe it is even more prevalent on a more recent historical level, and again something maybe that hasn't been even picked up on. I mean, I suppose even stuff like the Muppets.
Yeah,
they're like really weird, sort of like wrongly shaped animal people.
Well, even the ones that weren't animals, like the ones that are supposed to be like humans, like Waldorf and Stanley, the two old guys. They had bulbous features and squinty eyes, and one of them's got a weird coloured nose, I think. Things like that. So it's been explored in a lot of different things.
Maybe it's an interesting thing. Maybe it's been so prevalent to reflect the imperfection of people in general, because I guess in a sense everybody is imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect person, therefore everybody's imperfect, and then maybe it's just that's why it's just been there going under the radar, because it's just like everybody just accepts it because it's the only real thing. I don't know. It can only it'll be real if it's imperfect, I suppose.
So here's one, and it's probably just going to be brief, but it's an idea I've thought about, that something I used to do as a child, and I just thought it's interesting that I did it, and I would love to find out how many thousands of other people probably did something simple. The idea is questioning reality and one's inabilities, and by that I mean I questioned reality on, is mind reading real? Things like that. I'd think about it when I was 3, 5, 7, 9, a lot of my childhood, and then it's like the idea. I'd sit and think. So if there's this idea of telepathy and mind reading, because it's being talked about on TV programs, maybe it is a real thing, and it's just being hidden from me, or people are trying to tell me it's not real because they would want to use it against me. And this is why there's things like tinfoil hat. Because there are people who legitimately still as adults have those thoughts. They're looked at as crazy, and that's why they have tinfoil hats, to protect their mind from being read by the government. So as a child I just think, what if my parents are trying to read my mind? So I just have weird thoughts of think this random obscure thing and look at them to see if they reacted at all, just in the sense of, well, if they were reading my mind, they'd be shocked by this, and it wasn't anything horrible, but it's just something that would make them go, really? And so I'd look and I'd repeat this experiment probably once a year, just with people around me, if I was bored on a car trip. And it has always just seemed like something to do, just in case. I hadn't even seen The Matrix at that point, and I was already having these kind of thoughts. I'm sure everyone has these kind of thoughts. I'm sure it's not strange.
I had ones like that. They weren't exactly the same as what you described, but mine were more trying to make bets with reality.
Okay.
So I'd be in my head, right, if I do this and this happens like this, and that this means this, and so I almost play causal games with determinological effects, I suppose. So I'd be right, if this happens, then that means that I should do this, and it's almost just trying to.
If I drop a stick and it faces that way, I'll go and get a packet.
Yeah, I guess that sort of thing. So I
think I used to do that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And another example of it is I would try and trick the mirror, because I didn't understand the concept of light, and that's how mirrors work. So it's I would try and see if I could get to the mirror before my reflection got there, to see if it was really what I was told. Oh, it just happens, and it's just a reflection, and I didn't understand it. I couldn't comprehend it properly. So it's can I trick the mirror? Can I beat it? Is there something I can do to manipulate this?
Yeah, I remember did that with the first time I was ever recorded on a video recorder, a camcorder, when I was probably 7 maybe, and the first time I heard it played back, I was my voice sounds really high pitched. I don't think or remember my voice being that high pitched before. So next time, what I'll have to do is talk in a really stupid high pitched voice, and then maybe it will sound normal.
Yeah.
And I mean, that didn't work.
But you're trying to check out how reality works and test boundaries.
Yeah. But it's like playing experiments with reality. That's generally what life is in a sense.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's something I figured out recently is that all ises are maybes. All ises are could be. So it's like, anything that is, it actually just could be.
Bricks or brick is hard, but you could find. That's not actually true. It's just we've been conditioned. I don't know. But it gets really abstract when you go down that path, because then you start to question. When you're questioning the nature of reality, you're trying to unwind existence itself.
But it's, exactly. But it's like you have to just trust.
If you can find out the water doesn't really make things wet, then nothing else could ever make sense.
It's the logical inconsistency of inferences, but unfortunately sometimes inferences are all we have to work with, so we kind of have to just roll with them and hope they work out all right. But it's kind of handy, otherwise it'd rule out pretty much all logic.
Fair. I thought that'd just be a short one, but something interesting about my childhood, and I'd love to find out how many other people did something similar. Do you want to introduce the next one then?
Yeah, no, this one's kind of a weird one. I mean, this is more of a start of a thought and an idea about something. But, I mean, at this point, we can all be pretty comfortable knowing what we mean by an SJW or
just social justice
by social justice in general. Not so much. We don't even need to know about the W at this point. Just the SJ, the social justice bit. Social justice is not exactly a new thing, although what we're seeing at the moment probably is a new version of it.
I was going to say it's a new version of it. So it's not... The original person who coined the term probably had a completely different interpretation of what ideas they were working with. I mean,
it might have even been somebody like J.S. Mill, who was the original inventor of the term social justice, but I'm pretty sure it was just starting to get thrown around amongst philosophers a couple of 100 years ago. So it's been a thing, and some of the original proponents of social justice drew an important, made luck an important feature of their formulation of the need for social justice. So they'd basically try and determine who's been unlucky, who's been lucky, and then try and redistribute based on who's been unfortunate and whatnot. So take from the lucky and give to the unlucky. Now it just makes me wonder if the modern proponents of social justice would have any sort of consideration of that as being the point of what they're talking about, what they're advocating, and that if we did start looking at that, then it makes for a pretty easy focus point for being able to either prove or disprove the need for or the lack of need for social justice, and or what it is, and or if it even makes sense. Because if luck doesn't make sense, or for whatever reason, then social justice doesn't make sense. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess it's something circles back around to people looking to almost religious ideas or spiritual ideas.
Exactly.
Trying to base their morals in reality again.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think I don't believe in luck anymore, and I haven't thought about it really, but I definitely, I'm not superstitious in that sense. There's things that I believe in, there's spiritual things that I believe in. I'm a spiritual person, if I'm going to use that phrase. I believe in a lot of things that are, outside of the normal perception of reality, but luck isn't one of them anymore. And I used to be superstitious about luck. I used to think about it a lot, and I don't know when I stopped. But now I think about it, no, I don't think doing this will be, increase my fortune in the world. I'm very much of the thoughts that I make my fortune.
Yeah, I mean, I at least like to think that you make your own luck, and if you're conscious and able to think the thought that you can make your own luck, then you can probably make your own luck. And I mean, luck's just a kind of, I don't know, luck's a sucker's way of saying causality. It's like,
yeah, kind of, but you're looking
or
at
variance
this,
or whatever, because variance is a thing. But
extra special causality that happens.
Yeah, because
outside
luck,
of normal. What is inputted into life can be modified.
Yeah. So I mean, I suppose it's a saying. Some people you could describe them as fortunate and unfortunate, and is that the same as saying that they're lucky and unlucky?
I think they're not.
I think there might be something. Yeah, there is a distinction between that. So
they're not synonyms necessarily.
I mean, with that in mind, maybe if the social justice lot should look towards the idea of fortunate and unfortunate as being what they need to tackle as far as containing oppressions and stuff like that. All
through the lens of you're unfortunate because you have a different
formulated oppression. It's like pre-formulated oppression. It's literal prejudgment, isn't it?
Yeah, they're mixing up their correlation of what is fortune and who is fortunate.
It does seem bizarrely hypocritical, doesn't it?
If they were standing up and saying poor people, if they weren't talking about things that you couldn't help in terms of genetics or origin, that would be one thing. But if it would be a lot, and that's what it is at the moment. But if they went to, we want justice for people who are born into poor families, regardless of their creed, culture.
Exactly.
If they've migrated or if
they're
native,
born with genetic difficulties or disorders that have been given to them, whatever forces they can't control, and things that have. It
would be a much stronger movement with a lot more support because people would go, there is an imbalance in the world
because it's almost like
we want to bring balance. People who happen to be fortunate enough to be born into a privileged family. I mean, My background is my parents were both born into working class poor families with my mum had many siblings. Her parents had come from two divorced couples that came together and brought their children together into one family, and they both worked very hard their entire lives. So my mum came from working class origins. My dad the same. My granddad was he was born in a house, and they sort of they sort of struggled through their life in a bit, but they made their own fortune in the sense of they worked their way up slowly, it's small holdings and things like that. My nan on my dad's side, she was the daughter of an RAF pilot lady. She was in the RAF. Probably not a pilot, but she was in the RAF. I don't know enough about my great-grandmother to go into detail. And a Indian man from the Indian Army having a fling while they're both serving, and that had my nan. My great-grandmother gave my nan up for adoption. She was adopted in basically to be a slave for a chip shop. She was raised as someone of, you can cut the potatoes, that's why we got you. That was the nature of her adoption. So they all came from very humble backgrounds. My parents didn't have a lot of money when they grew up, and until they were adults, when they started to form their lives, they made their luck, they made their fortune. They were able to, through their own hard work and ingenuity, and willpower, to make it, because it's not easy and lots of people try and fail, but they worked their way up and to a middle class way of life. And that's what I was born into, and that's my fortune, That's my privilege. It's not because of my skin colour, because I don't share skin colour with most people, that's for sure.
It's something I've said a lot of times, is I like to think that the people who suffered to give us this world did so we wouldn't have to suffer as much.
Yeah.
And it's, I think that does manifest in a lot of ways, but,
strong men make good times.
I think this
scenario, how.
Yeah.
But I do recognise I'm privileged. I'm privileged to be born into wealth. But they're all trying to spin it that privilege isn't what wealth you're born into, what the nature of your parents. Because you can also have wealthy parents, and you can be privileged in that sense. But then if they're assholes and they don't care about their kids and they traumatise you for whatever reason, or put you through all sorts of ordeals, regardless of wealth, regardless of their skin colour, and regardless of their creed, you're not really privileged. If you're brought up in that kind of environment, but you suffer some sort of abuse, that's not really privilege either. I'm privileged because my parents are lovely people that have always cared about me, put me and my sister first, made sure we all had good lives, make sure that we could all succeed, and imprint us with the ideals to go on and earn and make our own fortune and make sure we're successful. That's my privilege. So it doesn't even matter if you're born into wealth. It's about being born into the right support.
It harkens back to that: give a man a fish, etc. Give him the tools and seeds. And this tools and seeds are a metaphor. It's not just literally give them tools and seeds. It's some people might just think like, wow, how are you going to make fish with tools and seeds? You can't grow fish on trees, but
give them the ability to cope and thrive in the world.
Yeah. Facilitate potential. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because that's what people are in a sense. The
people who should be benefiting from the idea of social justice, they should be all kinds of people. They shouldn't be. It shouldn't be affirmative action for someone based on their race.
It shouldn't be a formula. It should be. The formula should be: are you actually oppressed and unfortunate?
Not do you fit into this area of a Venn diagram?
Is it unfortunate that you're in this? Not like you've put yourself in this position or whatever, or that you fit the right physical criteria. That not.
We looked at a Venn diagram and you fit in this bit here, so you must need help. They might turn around and say, well, I don't need help. I'm successful and I've come from a loving family that always supported me and gave me everything I need. No, but you need help because this says this. It's like, this is where individualism plays into it, isn't it? We should be looking at everyone as individuals and looking at why they need help.
Yeah. Do unto
why
others
they need
as
justice.
They are an entity unto themselves.
Were you treated unjustly? And that should be the question, not who are you in terms of physical appearance, physical makeup, origin, etc.
I mean, I generally measure on two terms, and that's if it's good, if it's reasonable. So if it's justice is a tricky thing to define because everybody's got their own idea about what justice is. But I think it's easier to get people to an idea of, do you know what good means? Do you know what reasonable means? And it's like, even without having, people maybe can't even explain what these two terms mean, but they know what it means.
They couldn't define it though.
I think that is a bit like what fairness is like as well, because we can have this as a bonus discussion quickly if you want.
You want to go into fairness? It's a concept.
Recent study,
it should be quite simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's.
But you break it down, and actually, fairness isn't very simple at all, really, because the interpretation of fairness is very subjective.
Yeah, well, I mean, what people decide is or isn't fair seems to be a lot of the time very subjective, but it seems that everybody's got this idea of fairness in their head, and I'm not too sure entirely if it comes from just the human condition or the human social condition, or just the social condition, maybe not even the human social condition. It might just be literally a conditioning thing. But anyway, recently there's studies that did experiments with capuchin monkeys, I think it was this time, and they basically trained them to press a button to get food or something like that, and at first they were giving them both cucumbers, and they'd have two monkeys doing it at once, and then eventually they'd change the cucumbers to grapes for one monkey, and generally it was consistently found that the other monkey would start throwing away the cucumber when he was given the cucumber when he's seeing the other one getting given the grapes in form of protest, which is very interesting to me, because it shows that it might just be the case that this idea of fairness is something that's very, very inherent, but it's just not been understood well enough, and it's always strange to me that people appeal to fairness, and it's like, well, what do you mean by fair? And it's like, you never know. How are you going to measure fairness? We can go.
What did we? I mean, we've both like played with this idea before, and I think the interpretation I came up with to define it, based on things that you'd sort of given to me and information and knowledge you'd sort of imbued in me, was trying to make things more good for each individual involved.
I think the closest thing that I can think of to fairness is something like everybody agreeing on something at the same time and being satisfied.
Yeah, that's a good way to break it down.
But that isn't the sort of fairness that I think people are looking for a lot of the time. I think they're looking for something that's measurable or whatever. That's why they get mixed up with equality and thinking they need to divide stuff. And it's like,
I think you could probably say another way to define it, and sort of based off what I just said, to finish what I just said, maybe to refine it. Would be to increase the amount of good for a group of individuals, because you can have groups of individuals in a proportionate manner,
to attempt to formulate the best for everyone out of a given situation. I think maybe that's one way of putting it. I mean, I've toyed with the idea of good and reasonable being two barometers of something that can substitute as fairness. If everybody can agree that something's good and reasonable, or if things just are in the condition of being good and reasonable in an objective sense. But I'm just, I think
so. For something to be fair, you're saying everyone needs to be satisfied.
I think so. I think, and then it's a worrying conclusion, really, because that actually doesn't.
It's almost impossible to achieve in some circumstances.
And it indicates the idea of fairness is primarily. Well, it probably revolves around selfishness in a sense. In a lot of ways, it comes from, I don't know. Yeah.
Go on. I'm just going to grab a tissue.
It's usually with fairness. It's when somebody sees something and they decide, I want that too, or I would also. I think that I should have that as well, and it's it always comes down to a certain amount. There's a degree of entitlement that comes into fairness when people want to talk about it as well. It's like, am I entitled to this? What entitles me to this? Do I deserve this?
A lot of people get the idea that
and it's like, who can
they are entitled or they do deserve something without having earned it.
Yeah, nobody can really calculate.
That's a big peeve of mine.
It's not a mathematical concept. It's just again, and I think. I don't know if I remember to mention the other recording, but I think a recurring theme of these series of discussions will be related to definitions, won't they?
Yeah, I think that's an important thing,
because
because
definition of things a lot
of the world is now having arguments where no one's defining what they're arguing with each other first. Yeah. So they're having two different conversations that don't line up, and that's why they're never coming to an agreement. Yeah. Because when they start breaking things down into definitions, they find, if that's the case, then I do agree with you on that. It's like, then what are you arguing about? But it's because no one thinks to break down those definitions and agree upon them first. They can't go forward. There's no solution to be had there.
New Wave public intellectual PSA Sitch has coined the term Sitch's law to describe how it appears that 95% of arguments roughly relate to definitions of things. And that sounds about right. And in fact, I think it might even be more. It does seem a lot of the time that people's terminologies are just, they just don't match up.
I think we could achieve a lot more as a population of the West if we went into these conversations just saying, before I make my point, when I say this, I mean this. And we wouldn't be misunderstanding each other and like flailing around like flounders on the deck.
But it's easier said than done in a sense, and I think sometimes
egos get in the way.
We need to get to the point where, maybe it is just a case of either it's one or two things. It's ironing out language, or it's getting more flexible with language to the point where other people ask, "What do you mean by this?"
Instead of just going, "Well, my definition must be right, so I'm only going to work with mine." If you just ask what they're defining is, then the terminology they're using won't matter, because you're just going based on their definition. Regardless if you agree with their definition, at least you can come to some common ground in what is being discussed. Yeah,
look, at the moment we're harkening back to what we were saying about Trump, with people calling him a racist. It's like, what is their definition of racist?
Yeah.
We don't quite know. I don't think they know.
Multiple years to find out people were like using a different definition of race than I was. And I like to think, I'm not going to force that my definition of racism is correct, because it's It's a sort of subjective thing to look at. I mean, language, it would be nice if it's objective, but people are playing by their own rules constantly. I try and use dictionary definitions as much as possible. But if I suddenly decide, you know what, I'm going to call that round citrus fruit that is segmented and orange in colour, I'm going to call that a banana from now on. And I'm going to go around telling people how much I like bananas. And if someone puts a curvy yellow fruit that you peel the skin off of in front of me, I'm going to be disgusted because I hate those. But, how can I have such expectations of everyone if I don't define it?
Yeah, and I suppose, at the end of the day, it seems that the media is trying to take control of the language, like we mentioned before. And they're the ones who are seemingly trying to grab words like, I don't know, influencers or whatever, as some sort of word that they can now use to slander people with, and even in subcultures and such, like
because it's like you're forcing well, no, if we look at the one for influencer, for example, it's got a strong connotation to it because you're forcing responsibility on them. They haven't chosen to take the responsibility of what I'm saying is here to change people's minds and make sure they do what I do, or and act the way I think. Yeah,
exactly. So
it's up to the people who consume that content with their own agency.
It makes an offender of them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes them the oppressor in the narrative, and it makes it so not only are their supporters oppressing people, they are also oppressed by the person who's.
If I'm getting ideas from people
the oppression
on YouTube,
hierarchy,
I'm going out of my way to go and get those ideas from people on YouTube. That was my decision.
Yeah.
I wasn't forced to consume anyone's content. I wasn't forced to go and start agreeing with these people.
Yeah, no,
I went and found it on my own journey. I wasn't influenced.
Nobody has to agree with anybody.
I went and chose to gain information. No one breathed down my neck and forced me to do it in a concentration camp. It wasn't fucking...
There's no concentration camps around anywhere. Not here. Definitely not in America.
But they think that we live in Clockwork Orange and people are being forced to watch Sargon and things. It's like, we're making the choice too.
I mean, there might be an element of that with the mainstream media where people are forced to watch.
No one's being forced to consume the mainstream media. I'm not being forced to consume it.
Well, I mean, I don't know about forced.
It can be shoved in your face, but you can still go, no.
It is,
you can choose to ignore it.
If I suppose in a sense, if people have been taught to just lap up whatever's in front of them, it's not forced, but it's like, did you force that dog to eat this poison? Well, no, I didn't force it. It ate it for its own accord. I just put it down on the floor and it ate it. It's a bit like that.
But if the most powerful media companies with the most influence don't have power over me to put ideas in my head,
because
how can they accuse anyone else of being capable of that if they can't do it themselves?
Maybe
doesn't their argument completely fall flat at that point?
Maybe.
If they can't force people to be influenced, and these are the big media companies, the big news outlets, if they can't force people to be influenced, how can small fries...
Well, I mean, if they are not, then nobody else is, at the end of the day, at least.
Bingo. They've got no argument.
If anybody else is, then they have to be to a much higher degree.
They've got no argument. They've got no legs.
Their double standards are unbelievable, and it's postmodernist nonsense again, where they can just perform doublethink and expect everybody to just go along with it too. Sad.
So we'll go on to one of our last topics, and this is again probably a bit more a brief one, but I've been thinking for a while about the idea, and just something I've noticed a bit of a trend. I coin true names based off the idea of a cult, an old religion, and even sort of geeky fantasy, and the idea is that if we look at the idea of demons, it was that demons all went by pseudonyms, which might be it might be a plain name or an exotic name, but they would go around by pseudonyms because if you knew a demon's true name and called it by its true name, you could bind it to your will. And so if you knew someone's true name, you had true power over them. that's now bleeding into our reality of like
kind of ironic.
When we're
kind of as if some of those religious texts were a bit more prophetic than anybody give it credit for.
But maybe that's just monkeys and typewriters. You know, there's enough ideas in religions, enough things, avenues explored that some of them had to come into fruition.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of them. There seem to be more and more. I mean, I do like. Well, it's not like I like to think. I've come to like to think that
if religion was like an organised thing,
there is a degree of truth in a lot of religious texts. It's the sort of it's figurative truth a lot of the time, but it's indicative of figurative truths that are indicative of literal truths.
Let me say what I mean though. So the way it is it's sort of appearing in reality now that's applicable to us is that people have got the idea that if you know sort of a alternative media's entertainers or wherever it may be, instead of the pseudonym they go by for whatever their YouTube channel is, their Twitter handle, a name that they go by in the public because they want to protect their private life and create a separation between who they are out in fighting in the culture war in the metaphorical sense compared to who they are with their wife and their children. They've got the idea, but I know what their real name is on their birth certificate, so if I call them by that instead of their pseudonym they use for YouTube, isn't that... Look, I've got power over them, The main ones I see are, people speaking about Sargon going, but look, he's Carl Benjamin, he's Carl of Swindon. And it's just like, so what? You know his real name. They've got the idea that this suddenly means that they've got power over him, as if he was some. Yeah, they've demonized him metaphorically, and now they've got in their head
shows that people have already got these beliefs in their head beforehand that the names.
They don't even realise it because surely it's subconscious.
It's the Voldemort thing, isn't it? It's like I mean, sometimes it's like this name is so powerful that if you say it, then it will summon a mirror and then you can fight
Bloody
him or whatever.
Mary.
Yeah, that's thing. Beetlejuice.
When I'm seeing all the articles, love him or hate him, people talking about Tommy Robinson, if they're trying to berate him and belittle him,
it's always
it's Stephen Yaxley
Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Tommy Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon. That's now
as if
that
name. Means he's suddenly lost power because you've said that.
Yeah.
And I've seen
somehow makes him
people
shifty because he's got a false name. You can't trust this man. Why would he have a false name unless he was untrustworthy?
And the people who disagree with his ideology, so be it. They're allowed to have those thoughts and feelings.
And it's a personal ideology to an extent, but I think a lot of it is at least I mean, the main part of his ideology that drives his work is something that I don't think anybody could really disagree with, and that's that he just doesn't want to see people, young girls, trafficked for the pleasures of anybody.
No, that's quite a big way to define it.
It's not.
It just happens to be a certain group.
It's just like it's within this group. He's just saying it's almost like. I've seen this problem. Well, where is it? It's over there. Well, now it makes you a racist because that area is only for this kind of person.
But the point being is it's not people in groups on social media trying to sort of wave metaphorical pitchforks and torches are all using, but look, Stephen SYL, which is quite funny because it also stands for strapping young lad. SYL, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Look, and they're expecting people to recoil in fear because they've called out the true name. And then I found out it's not just me that's had this idea. I was just randomly looking up people that I'd found recently on YouTube on Encyclopedia Dramatica, which is just like a bit of a bullshit wiki site for. Here's a wiki that bitches about individuals basically, but they like on a wiki, if there's an article, it's in blue and it's underlined because it's hyperlinked within the site. And they called it Power Word, real name. Again, as if it's like a bit of Dungeons and Dragons sort of idea that having someone's true name means that you have power over them. So it's not just me that's thought about this. It's been coined under a different term, but it's the same idea. So I'm glad to see other people have this realization that people are lauding round such a simple piece of information as if it's like a real breaking news of look, you can see into their real lives a little bit.
Yeah,
and then if you look too close, you might see that they're really a person.
In some religions, using the god's name is blasphemy.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, are they worshipping these people as some sort of dark gods? Like not benevolent
but
gods,
malicious entities that are existing in our reality.
Gods. Yeah, exactly. But it's, is it far from the truth in a sense? I mean, they do seem to have sort of supernatural influence, and it's arguable that maybe in the advent of the internet, the entire human race should be maybe redefined as a species in a sense. I think it's just transformed people into very different entities than they were before, at least. At least in terms of how they interact, like in terms of social interaction.
All the cultures in general, like universally across this planet, it's not really universal then, but I don't think humanity's cultures are mature enough as a collective to deal with the world we're facing and the world we live in.
Yeah,
so the way we're going about everything,
that seems like one of the most certain things I can think of at the moment, isn't it? The people were not ready for the internet. It's clearly.
I know I'd totally go back if I could. Like, as someone who consumes the internet almost constantly, I consume technology a lot. My life's about sort of a duality between a love of technology and a love of nature, but I think because of the way things have been, I like technology, but I'm kind of revolted by it as well. So my love of nature is strong because there's nothing about nature that's making me feel revolted by people's behaviour and the interaction with nature that I have. So if I could choose between technology and nature, I would probably choose nature right now.
There's a brilliant animated film called Flight of Dragons. Have you seen Flight of Dragons? I've mentioned it before, possibly, but yeah, it's well worth watch. And yeah, one of the lines in it that the Green Wizard Carolinus that notes, and he basically notices man's machines, a mill wheel with the water going through it, and there's some like fairies get like caught in some smoke that's produced by a machine, and like the fairy falls into the mill wheel, and then it's all like and then Carolinus picks it up and brings it back to life, and he's like, the realms of magic and logic were supposed to work hand in hand, not destroy one another. And that's, I think that's the thing, is there is this constant and this kind of touches on the definition we came up recently for nature itself, which was that which occurs on its own, and that's kind of like magic because it's not done by our input or our influence. You can put when you put a seed in some soil, or you don't even put a seed can put itself in some soil, and it will just if by magic a tree grows. It's not something that's been forced by us and our hand, which is the side of logic compared to the side of magic in that metaphor. The natural happens by itself. I think now I've thought of it that way, I can't think of it any other way. It's the only way it makes sense. But it just seems that there's a bit of a conflict of interest between nature and technology, for want of a better term.
If I had to pick one or the other, I would choose nature.
But
I could, if I needed to go and become a hermit and live in the wilderness.
But here's the bizarre thing, and this is something I was going to bring up at some point. I would choose that over being
forced into having to consume things the way they are going.
Did I mention my Garden of Eden thought anytime recently?
No,
right, I had this thought, and we all know the idea of the Garden of Eden,
of course,
and I think, or at least it seems, that it's seen as some sort of idealistic paradise in a way. It's some sort of like the perfect form of being or something. Now, if it's so great, why have we not gone back there? Because we totally have the means to.
But that was the point of original sin. Original sin was you're not allowed now.
But I mean, surely if we can imagine this paradise and it's basically just nature plus turbo, Then why are we not just doing nature plus turbo?
Because people are greedy and they want more.
Right. But if these people also understand the idea that that's what they want, then why don't?
Because they don't want to agree with it. Because subjectively, people might think, yeah, that sounds great, and that would be good enough.
But yeah,
but a lot of people go,
well, I mean, there's
people always
reasons.
want more.
There's you know, I think.
Are you trying to suggest real communism?
No, not sort of. Not quite. I think that would be communitism anyway. But if in fact it's probably just naturism. But
I might use that
natural naturism. It's probably
next time I get in an argument with a communist and they say, "Oh, that wasn't real communist," I will just retort that the only time there was real communism, there was only two people, and then one of them wanted an apple.
Yeah, that's true. That's it. One of them wanted more than what they could have, and it just ruined it for everything. The whole thing collapsed. And
then they'll just retort, "Oh, that wasn't real communism."
Yeah, maybe.